This is Scoop, and we today have Doug Vann here talking about feeds temper and giving us all kinds of helpful hints. Okay, Doug, take it away.
Yay, take it away, Doug Vann. All right. Thank you for having me for the very first Google Hangout on Air version of the Drupal releases. My third time being with you, but first time for our Google Hangout launch. So this is awesome. Let me start showing my screen over here. Let's see. Nope, that's chat. That's screen share. And I will pick this screen and share that, and then change. So you should see the Ventus Reach website. Is that correct?
Yep.
Good. No, you don't. So, many of us know that the feeds module is awesome for pulling in CSV data and XML data and simple RSS data as well. The situation happens, though, that you're pulling in data of one kind and your content type has fields which require very specific kinds of data. So you can't always tailor what's coming in to what you want, but you can do some tampering with it. One of the most common uses of the feeds tamper module, in fact, I think many people download this module for one thing only, is changing string dates to actual time dates, because Drupal uses Unix timestamps, which I think the whole world should use, but they don't. So case in point, I've got a feed right here. Let's see. Yes, let me find a good one. Should I about to have this up? Quotes. Oh, give me a good one. Events. Here we go. Events to XML. So here's an XML feed that I pulled in for one of my projects, and here's a very standard date. Can we all see September 27, 2008, 10:25 a.m.? That's the date value that I would be pulling in, and you simply cannot plug that directly into a date field on a Drupal content type. Personally, I think the feed module, of all the fields to kind of be handsy with, I think getting a value like that, the feeds module should offer that, or maybe even on the date side of things. Maybe when it's when data is kind of shoved in that way sideways, it should realize, hey, I got to convert this. But nonetheless, neither the feeds module nor the date module do this for you. You must use feeds tamper. Feeds tamper is over here by Twistor. I have no idea who Twistor is, but thank you very much for the feeds tamper module. Very straightforward. Download the tar.gz or just drush.dl it and put it in your sites all module and run. Here's what it does. When you're on the here's a feed. So the earnings call feed is what I'm looking at here. The earnings call feed pulls in data from this is, forgive me, I have so many tabs open. I'm trying to figure out which one is which. It'll be over here. Yes, here's the earnings call data. Nope, that's annual reports. Fair enough. Why do I have this one open? So many tabs. Well, regardless. So here's the earnings call, and down in the mappings, I have all these various fields coming in. And by the way, you may be noticing a difference if you've used feeds before. I had to use XPath parser and then handcraft the navigation through the XML DOM to get to the element. It was ugly. It was a pain in the butt, and I was glad this project was not a flat rate. It was hourly. So yes, a lot of learning was happening here. But we have date fields in here, like date start. And so when we go to look at the tamper, because now I have this tamper tab, which you're not familiar with. You have edit, export, clone, and delete. But the tamper tab gives us a tamper option. So the value coming in here is wholly unacceptable for a date field until we go to the tamper, and I scroll down, and here it is. Here's the start date. And I'm not using the end date field because that is an option of every date field. But here's string to Unix timestamp. So very simply, it takes in that crazy looking value, which is right here, Sep 27, 2008, blah, blah, blah. It takes that string value and very quickly turns it into a date. String to date. There it is. String to Unix timestamp. So that's it. That is, I think, 99.9% of the people installing this module probably use it just for that. And it's beautiful that way. So, but that's all well and good. But I had some other situations as well. There were cases like that's a more complicated case. Let me drop that one at the beginning. Pin it. Any questions about this Tamper straight up before I go into some of the more complicated stuff?
Not yet.
All right, good deal. And I'll let Kathy be my curator of questions since I'm on a separate tab. If anybody pops anything into chat, then Kathy, you can let me know. There's so much more we can do, though. Here's a situation where I had a situation like this. By the way, NASDAQ supplies all these feeds about securities and exchange information, stock and dividend information, corporate governance, annual reports, blah, blah, blah. All this is available from NASDAQ as iframes, but the client wanted this to be highly themed into the website and just kind of, not some janky-looking iframe. And, of course, iframes are not responsive unless somebody's got some voodoo trick I don't know about. So we didn't have the control we wanted. So I'm pulling in lots of feeds now and doing lots of fun things with it. In fact, there's like dozens of feeds. I think there's 20. Yeah, 2 dozen. I think there's 24 maybe. But here was a situation where for all these different kinds, I don't even know the data. I just know it's a bunch of XML files and I have to play with them. But the contents of this data is very important to people who are looking for very specific things. When you find one of these reports here, it's available as a Word document, an Excel file, a PDF, or straight up HTML. So the situation is we had to be able to search through these and find the ones that people wanted to find. So my only option was to literally grab this HTML, the link for the HTML, and pull it in as a feed item and throw it into the body of the node. So every node, because I imported every one of these is a node, and these are just links. So each one of these, there's a Word doc field, an Excel spreadsheet field, a PDF field, and an HTML field, and they just have URLs. They're link fields. Very simple. Those come in very simply, and there's no tampering going on with that. But I needed to have the contents of one of these files just so I could quote-unquote index it. I'm not really indexing it. It's an exposed filter. So here's an exposed filter on the body field. It feels like a search mechanism, but we all know it's just a very fancy exposed filter. So what I did was I had to write a feeds tamper plugin for this, and it's a little complicated. So I'll start off with the harder one first. So here's a module that exists on the website. In the custom modules directory, I have everything's investor relations. So IR tweaks is where I store all my tweaking of the imports as they come in. I go to the module file. There is a CTools plugin on here on line 136, and I'll blow this up a little bit because I've been on both sides of the presentation, and it's always nice when they blow things up so you can read it. So implements hook CTools plugin directory. Some of you may have used this before for views plugins, content type plugins. This is a very common way of doing things, and some of this has kind of been standardized into Drupal 8's plugin system because there are too many ways to do this in Drupal 7. But I honestly don't know how much of it has been. I've only heard that it has. But here's a very simple thing going on here. So IR tweaks is, of course, is the name of the module, and the CTools plugin directory is the hook here. So the owner and the plugin type are being passed in. All the magic right here is in line 139. So only a very few modules look for instances of CTools plugin directory. In our case, if the module feeds Tamper right there, if the module named feeds Tamper is looking for this plugin, or for this hook rather, and specifically is looking for plugins, then we're going to return the value of plugins. Very simple. So this is called the CTools plugin directory hook. Therefore, what I'm saying is, hey, go look in my plugins directory if you're the feeds Tamper module looking for a plugin. Fair enough. So that tells you I have a plugins directory. And back here, sure enough, there is a plugins directory. If you go there, you have a couple plugins, as you would expect. So just like anyone who's ever done content type plugins or views field plugins, every folder, or I'm sorry, every file has its own plugin, one per file. So in this case, we're talking about the Securities and Exchange Commission HTML plugin. I wanted to parse that HTML field and put it into the body. Let's take a look at that one. So again, the CTools directory hook simply told the plugin where to go look for the plugin. So here it is. So, and by the way, on my Vim, for all you command line fiends out there, I have a very, very customized Vim RC file that it knows Drupal standards. So there's lots of really cool markup and stuff going on in here. Line 24 you'll see has red spots at the end. That's because I've exceeded the maximum character count of a comment line in Drupal. So yeah, so deal with it. That's because I commented out some code there. So we start off with, oh, you know what? Here's a situation. This should say HTML extractor. So let me change the name of this. SEC. Okay, insert. This should say SEC. What it did was HTML. I copied the same plugin over and over and kept on changing what it says, but that one got away from me. So this is the SEC HTML extractor. Every time you have a plugin for Feeds Tamper, you start off with a plugin array. No one's shocked. Everything starts off as an array. When you're using a Feeds Tamper, there are many things you can do with it. Typically, if you look at the Feeds Tamper user interface for the string to Unix timestamp, there are no options. It simply takes the Unix or the alphanumeric string and turns it into a Unix timestamp. There are many other options for Feeds Tamper that are baked in, regexes and trimming and et cetera, et cetera. But so sometimes there's a little form you get to fill out saying, hey, do this however, very specific ways. In my case, I don't actually have any form going on. So the form that the user is presented with to customize my plugin is called the Feeds Tamper SEC HTML form, which if you look down on line 16, I'm doing nothing. All I have is the required help index and the hash value, and it has no value at all. So literally, I am generating no real usable form here, but it is a requirement from Feeds Tamper. If my Feeds Tamper had something that asks user a question, do I do something at the beginning of a string or the end of a string, or what am I looking for? I could put something in there and have access to whatever setting they chose. It'll be stored in a variable set, and I can get it back with a variable get. No sense creating a table for this. But just the point of line 9 is there could be some user configurable options to my Feeds Tamper plugin, but I don't need any. It does one thing and one thing only. Callback function, there's a function down below, line 23, which says, okay, do this thing. If this is the tamper that's been selected for a specific field in the feed, then go to that function and execute it. It has a name, so that it appears in the list. And I should have showed you the list. I'll go back and look at the tamper list again, and then I'll show you the options there. And loop is very important. If you're changing all the spaces to dashes, or dashes to underscores, if you're doing some kind of a thing like that, then you want to loop through this and do it until it fails. It'll do this same thing as many times as it needs to until it's false. So that's important. And there's various categories of the Feeds Tamper plugins, which I should have showed you, and I'll show you here shortly. Now we're into the function. Yeah, there we go. So the Feeds Tamper SEC HTML callback. These are all the default parameters that come in on this. And seriously, you can just copy and paste this. I have 2 links that I'll show you here shortly that talk about creating these. And all you gotta do is just copy and paste these and then change them. It's really just dead simple. Then you can tell all your friends you write Feeds Tamper plugins for fun, and it really is that easy. So the result, the item key, the element key, the field, the settings, and the source. That settings value coming in would have been if we had actual form settings that changed anything. But again, mine just does one thing and it's done. The only thing I'm using from that big long list of parameters, that scary list, the only thing I'm using is field. There's line 25, field. Field equals file get contents. Now here's a weird thing. And by the way, notice in the end of line 25, I have the word field, the variable field again. So what's coming in here, this field that's coming in, this is going to be the body when I'm done parsing it. But it's the only value that's in there for now is the URL of the HTML version of the content. Remember, there was a Word doc, a PDF, an Excel, and an HTML list link, rather. So I'm taking that HTML link and I'm passing that value on the end of line 25 to a different server here. Or, I'm sorry, yeah, a different server. The reason I'm doing this, I've written a routine on another server that has line of sight to NASDAQ, because the Pantheon servers themselves can change IPs and change boxes. It's containerized. It's very cloudy. So its cloud nature, in most ways, will prohibit it from getting a line of sight to an IP whitelist to go do something important. So I have another server that's not in the cloud. I did not name it Pantheon.VentusRead. Somebody else did, so that just confuses things. It has nothing to do with Pantheon. But the point of line 25 is I'm taking the HTML link coming in, and I'm passing it into that URL call, and I'm getting the HTML back out. So the second and third examples are much simpler than this. But then on line 26, I'm taking that return value, that whole HTML, and I'm stripping the tags. Remember, the goal here was to store that HTML content into the body of the node. All the other fields are just dead simple. There's a date field that turns into a string to date, but then this one takes the HTML link and actually pulls that content right into the body field itself. Very straightforward. Close that. I should show you the Tamper UI, which I should have done moments ago. There is no, here's the HTML URL, the PDF URL, and the Excel URL, and the Word doc URL. Just like as I promised, they come in. There's no need to tamper with these, but let me show you the URL anyhow. I'm sorry, the user interface anyhow. Add plugin. So, take a drink of water here. And security updates. You have the dev sites behind. Like I said, the default Tamper is string to Unix timestamp, and that is just the default. And there are no options here. But if you change things, under date time, you can go backwards, Unix timestamp to date. Under filter, we can keyword filter in required field. Under HTML, we can entity decode, entity encode. We can make URLs absolute. We can strip tags. We can do all kinds of things. Under lists, we can explode. Like if you have a tab delimited CSV coming in, and then the fifth column of your tab delimited spreadsheet has an internal comma separated list, or maybe the whole thing is a CSV and the fifth column is a tab delimited or something. If you have kind of an embedded CSV inside of a CSV, you can explode the values and put them into multiple fields of taxonomy or some other repeatable field. That was a tricky problem until Feeds Tamper solved it. Filter into results, implode, blah blah blah. All kinds of mathematical operations, add things together. Other calculate hash. Honestly, I've used a handful of these. I did use the regex one time. Convert cases from upper to lower or vice versa. Check for values, like convert to Boolean. Check for yeses and nos, trues or falses or what have you, and convert it. You don't want to use a text field. If you're using a Boolean field instead of a text field, you can bring in text data and then run this converter on it and turn it into a Boolean. All kinds of great stuff. But under text, I also have some of my custom things. You'll see SEC HTML extractor. Well, that's the one that I wrote. I just showed you the code for that. So underneath text, there's the SEC HTML extractor. There's also the news HTML extractor. There's the EC year extractor and the EC quarter extractor. And we'll look at the code for some of these as well. So these are all most of these are default, except for a couple down here in text that I wrote myself. And again, of course, the very first one, string to Unix timestamp, is the most popular. I'm going to use my back button to get out of this because I do not want to add a filter to this specific feed. So this again is the Feeds Tamper user interface, and you've seen some of the defaults as well as the one that I created. Another example of needing to use this, the Feeds Tamper module, is over here, Q4, Q3, Q2, and Q1. It's always important in a lot of this financial data to know which quarter it applies to. Even though it was authored maybe in the first month of this year, the data is for the fourth quarter of last year. So the date that something happens or the date associated to it is not indicative of the quarter that the data represents. So I found that I always needed to know what quarter something happened in. And a lot of times I had to pull that out of the title of the node. So sure enough, there's I wrote a plugin for that. And that is EC quarter extractor. Earnings call, the earnings call quarter extractor. There are a handful of ways I could have done this. And if I wanted to get all jiggy with some regex, I could have done it in there. I've done big projects with regex. It's probably been, 9 years since I've really had to dig into regex. So I avoided it. So here's my EC quarter extractor. The same thing is going on here. Plug in array, the forms, the Feeds Tamper EC quarter form, and look at the form down there on line 16. There's nothing in that form. I'm just not pulling any content from the user and asking any questions. The callback is feeds Tamper EC quarter callback, which of course is where all the magic happens. Now this one is a little more involved. I happen to know that the title of each node that I pull in, each XML feed item, in the title of that there is a lowercase, no, an uppercase Q, and then an integer after it, either a 1, 2, 3, or 4, and it'll be surrounded by spaces. So somewhere in the middle of the sentence or towards the beginning will be an indication of which quarter this information is for. So on line 24, I initialize my quarter variable to be nil, null, and then I do a simple explode on the field, because the field coming in, this value, is literally the title of the XML feed item that's coming in. So now I have a big long sentence, a proper sentence with a period at the end. It's a very proper sentence. So I explode that into an array of vowels, and then so for every spacebar it creates a new element to the array. Then on line 26 I iterate through that array. For each vowels is val. I like using my plural and my singular to give some clear demarcation there of what the values are. If the string length, so of any segment, if the title of this node is I will not eat green eggs and Q3 ham, so the word Q3 suddenly appears in the middle of this Dr. Seuss sentence, then if the string length of the value is 2 characters, well, that would be the words of, it, and if is not numeric, the second character. Okay, so I'm putting together a substring inside of a not is numeric, or an is numeric with a not operator. So basically, I'm just saying any 2 character instances in this sentence where the second character oh, I got that backwards. Sorry, where the first number is not numeric. Yeah, somebody probably caught me before I caught myself. So if it's 2 characters and the first one is not numeric, then and is numeric the second character, then we're good. So then the value, am I using if similar? No. Oh, there it is. Okay, then the value of quarter. Okay, so it rolls off the edge. So $quarter. The quarter variable equals a string to lower of the val. So very clearly, if the val is uppercase Q1, then the variable quarter, which was initialized on line 24, will equal lower Q1. If it was Q4, it'll be lower Q4. If it was Q3, it'll be lower Q3. So I'm essentially just basically getting a variable here that I can use for a class for a wrapper later on. Then on line 29,
why can't you just,
yeah? Go ahead.
Why can't you just check for the letter Q instead of non-numeric in the first spot?
Point. That's a good point. In fact, that would probably be better, because if F5, I don't know, that's a load balancing software, isn't it? Yeah, there are a couple things that could trip this up and give me results I don't want. That's a good call. I think that would be too terse. I wanted to be verbose and show off a bunch of embedded functions here. I'm just guessing why I did it this way. That's great. I've given this talk 4 or 5 times now, and no one has said, "Why didn't you? Hey, dummy, why didn't you just put an if q in there?" Yeah, too easy. That would have been too easy. This is much more beautiful and complicated looking. But I will probably do that. Where would I do that? That would be if substring val 01 equals q, right there. So that would replace this whole line right here with substring val 01 equals 2. Yeah, good call. Good call. You're the first person out of 4 or 5 times doing this session to point that out. But regardless, we do get the value here in the quarter, and it ends up being wrapped. It is a class around these, which then pulls in this image. This is a background image, or some JavaScript or CSS or something. I don't know. I just build the DOM, and other people make it look pretty. So I wrap these in their proper classes. So that was simple. And the same thing happened in the case of the EC. This is the EC quarter extractor. There's also the case of the EC year extractor. And this may be one of your shortest sessions you ever have with your new Google Hangout format, because quite honestly, you can go through a dozen of these and they're all just about the same with a slight variation. It's the very. In fact, I'm going to skip the array up top and the form. By the way, lines 20 through 33 are what I copied in the very first time from a tutorial on how to make these, and I simply did not need any of that. So I have commented out example code living in my dev site here. But here we are again. Line 38 is the callback function. This time it's the EC year callback, not the EC quarter callback. And I'm doing a very simple thing. Line 40, I'm exploding again. So this line 40 is the exact same line that you saw in the quarter extractor. And then the iteration again through the array of indices. And this one is much more simple. If is numeric the whole thing, then year equals that. And again, before we launched this, all these changes long ago, we went through all the titles and we talked to the NASDAQ guy, the XML people over there, and we said, hey, I'm going to pull every 4-digit number out of that title, and I'm going to assume it's a year. Will I ever get snuffed on this? And they said no. There's lots of formats and whatnot to how they do their presentation and their data. They said you're just fine doing that. So this one, just dead simple. This is like the first couple weeks of a PHP class going through an explode and a for each and an if. I mean, this is just really simple stuff. But boy, is it powerful when you need it. I have another since that went so quickly. Snapshot plugin HTML. I did quarter to HTML. The news. So let's try the FFO. Let's go off the agenda here. Oh yeah, we're not doing this one. This one's way more complicated. I'm putting in lots of aggregated data on this one. I'm actually pulling out separate feeds. Yeah, forget that you saw that. But back to the feeds tamper. Down here you saw, this is on the content coming in, and ends up going to the body. This is where the HTML extractor gets put into the body field right here. Without this, if I disable this, then all you get coming in is the URL of the HTML content, not the content itself. Turn that back on. Now it literally grabs the content. So just not a lot of hocus pocus going on here. Very straightforward stuff. Questions about Feeds Tamper and Feeds Tamper plugins? I will also tell you that Drupal node 2287473 is an excellent Feeds Tamper tutorial, and it's was last updated last year. So it's a very excellent Drupal 7 and updated UI tutorial. And I'll post a link for this wherever. At the very least, I'll put this link in our Skype chat. But also, Wunderkraut, no surprise, has a great tutorial on creating plugins. I could have used for some code formatting in here. This gets a little jumbled at times, but nonetheless, the examples are in there. And anyone's welcome to have a copy of one of my files if you think it provides something useful. I'd be happy to give that up. Any questions at all?
Anybody have any questions? Oh, go ahead, Dennis.
Oh, I didn't have a question. I'm probably not going to have a question until I try to go do something. It looks pretty straightforward, but the devil's in the details. Actually, I would like a sample copy of one of your plugins.
For sure. I'll tell you what, they're so small. I'll take that EC quarter plugin and just paste it into Skype. It's pretty, including numbers. It is, I should shrink it down a little bit. It is 30 lines, and I could condense this if I wanted to, but I kind of make it verbose. 30 lines of awesomeness. Yeah, pretty dead simple there. So Dennis, what kind of use cases do you think you have for tampering with your feeds coming in?
Well, obviously the date one, and the rest I'm trying to go through and figure out. I'm having to convert about 100 fields coming in, and I'm not quite sure how I need to manipulate it yet, but I do know the date is a problem.
Were you the guy that I was talking to the other day that wanted just the year
Yes.
and Unix
Yep.
timestamp?
Yep.
So I did that on another project, and I did end up defaulting it to January 1st of its year.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do too.
Oh, actually, it wasn't a year. It was times of day. I was pulling in class data. Given a classroom at an institution that ran Monday, Wednesdays, there would be a first period of 8 to 8:50 or something. And when I pulled the data in from a CSV, what they gave me was just insane. I don't even know if they invented their own number system or what that was, but I couldn't. I mean, there was no feed stamper plugin for it. And I finally said, hey, look, can you please export that into something usable? And I forget what they gave me, but I ended up having to say that was, that 8 o'clock a.m. ended up being 8 a.m. January 1st, 1970. 8 a.m. Yeah, because Unix timestamp doesn't respect just a time. And I couldn't do math on intervals based on text values of 8:00 a.m. So I literally had to turn everything into, everything happened, the year before I was born on this website. It was the strangest thing. But, the front-end users never see that. They have no idea. So it was beautiful. Who else has some use cases for feeds tamper?
I'm not sure if I need feeds tamper yet, but what I'm trying to do is use feeds to export using XML, the structure, the content types from a site, and use that to create sample data. Actually, it's not the content types, it's sample data. So I want to create sample data in one site, and then use that sample data on a bunch of different prototype sites that may have slightly different data models. So I can use feeds to map it different ways to different prototypes. So I'm not quite sure if I need tamper for anything besides, like Dennis said, the dates. Have you ever run into entity references and using XML? Is that done, out of the box using feeds? I believe it is. Or did you ever have to do anything with tamper for that? Feeds tamper?
I have not used tamper for that. I wrote some custom, because back before feeds and feeds tamper, I just wrote custom migration scripts. I'm by no means, a PHP ninja, but that is one thing that I was doing, before I came to Drupal, and then I just kept on doing it when I came to Drupal. So I don't know. There may be some advanced strategies for that. Of course, the migrate module is awesome for that. It keeps track of old foreign keys and then relates them again on the next batch. So that's a beautiful way of doing it. But I don't know that anyone's solved that problem with feeds tamper.
You're right. And the reason I don't want to use migrate is I have a different data model on each one of the sites.
Yeah.
So you'd have to, write a different migration for each one of those, where with feeds I can just change the mapping on a per site basis.
For sure. Yeah, I could see feeds tamper, like if you kept a little table lying around. So, the feeds tamper model says, the feeds tamper plugin would say, okay, I'm getting this value coming in, maybe it's a node ID or something. And then you have a little lookup table in that plugin that says, okay, yeah, it's coming in this, but really it's really going to be this. So you store a different value based on a previously known key. So it's going to be a lot of custom code, but it'll get you there.
Okay, thanks.
I could see using feeds tamper to do a quick lookup and translate a value.
So you write your own, basically translate that migrate does for you. Oh, okay.
Exactly. And we could key this on titles or something, assuming titles are unique. If something's coming in with the title of Gettysburg Address, and I've already imported that node before, now something's referring to that node. If it's referring to node such and such with the title of Gettysburg Address, I can do an internal lookup and say, oh, timeout. Don't refer to node 17. Refer to node 404. Because that's what my Gettysburg node is, not 17.
Right.
So yeah, I could see that. That'd be a pretty quick shortcut, as long as you kept some. You may find yourself having 20 lines of declared arrays, and I think have we all done that? made views kick out node IDs and something with commas on them, and just cut and paste it into array variable equals array, and you just paste it in. I don't know. There's lots of tricks for creating huge arrays like that.
Mm-hmm.
Groovy.
Thanks.
Sure. Oh, I did not paste those links. The feed stamper example, node 2287473. That is going to be down here. Shoot. And then the Wonderkraut feed stamper plugin is very nice as well. So you have 30 lines of awesome code with no mistakes. Nope, I think I corrected that one. Yeah. And then 2 links as well. Feel the power of feed stamper.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. We really appreciate you coming in and showing us that and being our first ever live Google Hangouts presentation.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to have you come back and do another one.
Yay! Bring it on.
Yes, it was great. It was very well timed, too, because I'm right in the middle of just starting this project the next day or so.
Oh, yeah. Well, cool.
Yes.
And as always, pop your questions into Drupalistas on Skype. And I'll be happy to hop in.
Okay. And if anybody else doesn't have, if there are no other questions, then I think I'll stop the broadcast. And thank Doug once again, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Doug. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.